The monk I met at the riverside had brought me to his cabin. The hope that the monk could help explain my predicament was lost when I found out we couldn't communicate in a mutual language. He did know enough of my native language to tell me that he couldn't speak in it. The monk was as surprised to see me as I was when I discovered that he couldn't speak my language. The first thing he told me when he saw me was that he couldn't speak in it. He probably expected to be pestered by me, for he had that guilty look on his face. I was just disappointed and wondered, am I even still in my own country? Had I drifted to somewhere abroad? I remember I had met a little girl at the meadows before I left. Was she also not able to speak my language as well? She had disappeared before I got a chance to talk with her. There were many other cabins beside the one that the monk had. She probably lived in one of them. If I end up meeting her here, I would very much like to talk to her on where she had hidden. She must have been good at playing hide and seek. The cabin the monk lived in was filled with dusty old books, as I expected. The monk probably spent more of his time with the scriptures here than by the riverside meditating. It was a good thing that I met him when he did. None of the books on the bookshelf that the monk had were written in a script that I could understand, like maybe Arabic or the obvious Roman alphabet. It looked much more similar to the obscure writing system that the Austronesian languages still use, like Khmer or Burmese. I tried asking permission from the monk to take a look inside one of them. I used a mix of signals, which include putting both of my palms together as if I was praying, then pointing to the bookshelf, and then to my eyes before tracing my fingers to my palm, as if I was writing. The monk was initially puzzled, but then gradually became amused at my best efforts to communicate to him that I wanted to read the books. In the end, I think he understood what I was trying to convey to him, since he took out one book which was significantly thinner than the other more voluminous titles on the shelf and gave it to me. The book was obviously written for children, since there were more pictures than words in each page of it. I wasn't able to understand the words, but I was able to appreciate the illustrations, which really helped in telling me the story. From what I understood, it was the story of a hero who, as a young boy, was already capable of defending his people from barbaric intruders. In his youth, he had trained to become a fighter with a guru on top of a hill. Later in the story, his heroics are discovered by the king, and as a result, he was knighted. He was knighted with a few other notable warriors who he later befriended. As a knight to the king, he became commander to a large army that would fight in a war for independence from the tyrannical emperor. The hero won and was able to enforce his king's demand for the emperor to seek control of any territory under the kingdom. After the war, the hero is no longer noted for his achievements as a warrior, but as an ambassador who maintained relations with rulers of other realms. The tragedy of the story is when the hero is wrongly accused of adultery with the king's wife. The king, who didn't do any prior investigation towards the offense, banished the hero from the kingdom. This led his friend, who was knighted with the hero, to lead a rebellion in order to seek justice for him. I was so absorbed with the children's book that I didn't realize the day had gone dark. Had I been reading the book for so long? The sky was bright a few moments ago. I noticed that there were a fire burning. It wasn't particularly for warming up the place, since it wasn't really cold, but rather for the illumination, since there was no electricity here. I guess using fire for lighting was useful in that regard, though I imagine it has to be extinguished later when we go to sleep, otherwise it'll become a fire hazard. I wondered why the monk hadn't checked on me when I was reading. Where is he anyway? He was no longer in the cabin. I assumed he had been preparing some food for dinner, and I was probably correct at that because there were dishes on the dining table. The food was still warm, and so he must have only recently finished making them. He had fried some fish and made sambal. The rice pot had more than enough rice for the both of us. I wasn't sure if the monk had actually did the cooking, or whether there was only going to be the two of us who's going to be having dinner here. The neighing of a horse was heard, and before I could go outside to take a look, the monk entered. Only this time, he wasn't wearing the robe he had worn earlier in the day. He was clad in armor and looked hurt. He got into the cabin and collapsed to the floor as he reached out for me. He held his throat while cupping his hands to his mouth, which I assumed to mean he wanted some water. I found a jug filled with water on the dining table. I poured it into a glass to give it to the monk, but I was too late. He was already dead. I'm not a doctor, but I checked his pulse and couldn't find one, so I came to that conclusion. What exactly is going on here? Who was this monk? Why was he killed? How was he inflicted these fatal injuries? Did I miss a battle of some sort while I was writing this book? Have I been a craven who had been hidden while another sacrificed himself? So many questions, but there was nobody around me to answer them. Wait just a moment. There were plenty of other cabins in the area. I could knock every door until I get some answers. Should I, though? There must be some sort of war going on right now. I don't think the monk had been the only casualty. He actually managed to escape the battlefield before dying here in the cabin. There must have been plenty who died then and there at the battlefield, wherever that was. I looked at the cut that got him. The blood trails could be seen as far as the eye could see. It was impressive that he was still able to hold on to his horse and walk in his last moments. The door was still wide open, and I barged to it. If the enemy wanted to find the monk who had retreated, they're going to follow that trail, and then I'll get caught. Is it safer to stay, or should I get out of here quick? Where was I going to go? Calm down. I need to keep it together and think. The monk had died through loss of excessive blood from a wound, which he got from a blade of some sort. It wasn't from a bullet. The war that's happening is using medieval weapons for some reason and not modern artillery. Whatever danger that's going to happen will only occur if I get close enough to the battlefield. Even if there are archers, how far could it exactly reach? I think I'll just help myself to the food on the dining table and make a decision at a later time.